Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another episode of Spoiler Sundays. So this is the time of the week where I take a look at all of the news and spoilers for the Digimon trading card game over in Japan and, well, talk about them. So starting off with some news, we did get confirmation that BT12 is coming out on November 25th. So this is about 2 months after the Japanese release of their BT11. So this seems like it is coming quickly in terms of the news aspect, considering we're mid-spoiler season for BT11, but this is normal for Bandai because Bandai generally prints off of pre-order numbers and pre-sales, so they generally want to try to get this information out to stores and distributors so that way they know to be able to order the product, so Bandai knows how much to print, which again is why it feels rather fast. But again, looking at the time frame of the releases, this is 2 months after BT11, which is par for the course for a decent amount of trading card games between different sets. But as far as other information to go over, there's going to be 112 cards in the set. Normal rarity breakdowns, as we've seen in a lot of other BT sets before this. Then it's going to be more Xros Wars focus, and we're going to be seeing new Xros Wars characters coming into it, which allows us to believe that it's going to be based on, well, the Boy Who Leapt Through Time season of Xros Wars, which is their season 3 of Xros Wars. So BT11 is season 2, BT10 was season 1, so it only makes sense that this is basically their season 3, starring Gundramon. So I'm going to be really curious and excited to see what they decide to do with the character. And then on top of that, we're also going to have a lineup of Digimon and Tamers from past Digimon anime seasons. So if anyone who watched season 3 knows that there was just this big hurrah ending where they brought back all of the main characters up until that point. So it just makes sense that they're also going to be represented here in some capacity. Then the box toppers let you feel the bonds between Digimon and Tamers, and I'm curious to see what they're going to do, considering they also are stating that you'll be able to build Tamer-based decks. So I, again, don't know what this means. It's probably going to be something more unique to BT12, but I really wish that they would kind of stop it utilizing Tamers, considering we still have very little ways of interacting with Tamers, and a lot of the problems of the game actually do come from Tamer usage and Tamer reliance, as we saw with hybrids and the Xros Wars mechanics. And then the last bit of information we have is there is a chance of getting one low pull rate card with the original art per box, so they're just having more ways to be able to give us cards in different rarities. But in terms of the actual spoilers that we got for BT11 Go, there's about 33 of them, so let's just dive right in. First up, we have a new version of Madoki Betamon. This is just a blah vanilla card. We've seen these stats before, and Madoki Betamon is going to be a green rookie. Next up, we have Ninjamon. So Ninjamon is going to be a green level 4 Digimon. Again, stats not anything too special, with the inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when you play a Tamer, you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, which is just alternative ways to be able to interact with your opponent's Digimon, because green is all about suspending the opponent's Digimon down or suspending your Digimon down for various buffs and benefits, and this is just helping you be able to utilize your Tamers alternatively to be able to gain some extra value off of them. Next, we have a new version of Pangeamon. So Pangeamon is going to be a level 5 green Digimon. He could digivolve off of a level 4 green or blue Digimon for 4. So this is kind of going in line with what the Leomon stuff has been doing as of EX2. And then what this card is doing is he also is going to be treated as a Leomon. Well, because his translated name is Ice Leomon, but I digress, and that's just nice because it allows us to use him with some of our Leomon synergy-based cards. Then, on top of that, he has a When Digivolving ability, where we get to play a blue or green Tamer with a play cost of 4 or less from our hand for free, which is really good because having free access to be able to set up your Tamers is just really good, so that way, well, you could have your Tamers set up. I'm guessing this ability is mainly supposed to be played with Jerry, So that way we could use Jerry's ability to be able to play a Leomon from our hand, which just allows us to get even more value off of Digivolving into Pangeomon. No, Jerry won't be able to play Pangeomon because the effect isn't treating it as a Leomon, it's treating it as if it has Leomon in its name, which is important to distinguish the two differences when it comes to name-based synergies. Then its inheritable ability is actually pretty decent, where during your turn, once per turn, when you play another Digimon from a card effect, then one of your Digimon gains the Rush ability for the turn, which I'm guessing this is supposed to line up with the When Digivolving ability to be able to try to spawn Jerrys, to spawn Leomons, to be able to spawn extra bodies with Rush, and this also combos nicely with the X Antibody stuff that also want to spawn bodies when they're dying, so it's just a good card to combo with the Leomon deck that's slowly forming that we've been getting the parts and pieces of for the past couple of sets. Jumping ship to red, we have a new version of Bearmon. So the art is a Digimon World 3 reference, which I really liked because, well, I actually like that game quite a lot. And as far as what this card is doing, it's a pretty decent rookie with a nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon's attack target changes, then it gets plus 3000 DP for the turn, so it's supposed to be working with one of the new mechanics that's going to be in this set, which I'll show you in just a moment off of the next card, which is going to be Grizzlymon. So Grizzlymon has the brand new charge mechanic natively. So what the charge mechanic states is when this Digimon attacks, we may change the target of the attack to one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon with the highest DP. So this kind of plays with Bearmon where it wants to have our Digimon have an increase in DP, so that way we could beat up their Digimon with the highest DP that's unsuspended thanks to the charge mechanic. Then its inheritable ability is doing something very similar to what we just saw with Bearmon, where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon's attack changes targets, then it gets plus 3000 DP until the end of the turn to try to make our higher levels even stronger. And then continuing with the charge line, we have a new version of Grapplemon. So Grapplemon is going to be red this time, and again, he has the charge mechanic, which allows us to change the attack to one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon with the highest DP, which I think is pretty good. Alternative forms of removal added into red, and on top of that, it has the nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon's attack target changes, then we get to trash the top card from the opponent's security stack, basically allowing us to still deal damage while changing our attack to one of their Digimon to be able to not only just delete their Digimon, but to try to burn their security at the same time. And the big mega that wants us to play with the charge mechanic and going to be the end of this line is going to be a new version of Marsmon. So this new version of Marsmon has the charge mechanic built into him, on top of the fact that he has the when digivolving ability of Blitz. So even when we digivolve into him and the memory has to pass over onto the opponent's side, we still can make that charge attack, and that charge attack with his full line is going to allow us to burn the opponent's security, on top of the fact that it'll make him even stronger with all of our different DP boosts. Then on top of that, he has the nice ability where during your turn, once per turn, when the attack target of one of your Digimon changes, we get to unsuspend one of our Digimon and gain a memory for each tamer that we have in play. So we could use this in combination with the Blitz mechanic on top of any tamers that we have in play to be able to gain memory back, to not actually pass our turn, to be able to do more possible things with, and make it possibly a second follow-up attack, which is pretty good considering that we're already trying to trash the opponent's security and delete the opponent's Digimon, so we could use that follow-up attack to make another attack at either their Digimon or their security. Next up, we have Analog Man. So Analog Man is going to be a 4-costed black tamer, and this is going to be more Machinedramon support. So cyborgs and machines have gotten little bits of support here and there, and this is just continuing to add to their overall toolbox, which is pretty decent, especially since they already have lots of different tools that they want to be incorporating into the deck already. So at the start of our main phase, by trashing a level 5 Cyborg traded Digimon from our hand, we get to gain a memory and draw a card. So it's acting similar to Kazu, except requiring us to do absolutely nothing but have this tamer on the field, which is pretty decent, even though it's not a memory-fixing tamer. He still gives us some extra utility with a nice ability that happens on the opponent's turn, where when your opponent's Digimon attacks a player, by suspending this tamer, we get to change the attack to one of our level 6 Digimon with machine in its traits, which is basically giving pseudo blocker to any of our level 6s, so that way we could customize our inheritable abilities for our Machinedramon to be even more powerful than it's ever been, just because now with Analog Man we don't necessarily need to run the blocker, although we still could if we wanted to, giving us the freedom and flexibility to be able to customize the deck to our liking. But it's nice to see that we have some really decent defensive abilities and more inter-turn interactions. And then we did get a new level 5 cyborg for us to think about playing around with in the form of a new Gigadramon, and this new Gigadramon is a very simple yet effective card on having the jamming ability native to him, and on top of that it has the inheritable ability of reboot generically, so it doesn't necessarily specify that it needs to be with just our machine Digimon, making him just a really good generic black tool for any black deck to use. And then on top of that, we have a new option for us to be playing around with for black in the form of DG Dimension. So DG Dimension states that when we would use this card, if we have a black tamer in play, we get to reduce the memory cost of this card by 1. So it's actually costing us 7, not 8, to be able to use this card, and this card's main ability states that 3 of the opponent's Digimon get de-digivolve 1, then we get to delete 3 of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 6 or less, so it's just a good way at trying to control and manipulate the field, to be able to delete a wide variety of targets, a little bit better than something like Ultimate Flare, even though Ultimate Flare does have some really good control elements in itself, just because the Digivolve is higher, dealing more with one stack. This is kind of doing something similar, trying to take out multiple stacks if they have a wide field of Digimon. Then its security ability is activating its main, making it a pretty decent security threat as well. And then speaking of more Machinedramon support, we actually have a brand new version of Machinedramon. I personally don't think this new version of Machinedramon is going to be that much better than the old one or replace the old one, just because the old one has some really good built-in protections that we want to be utilizing. But this is still just a pretty decent one to think about utilizing because it has an on-play and when digivolving ability, where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck, add 1 analog man from among them into our hand, and 1 card with cyborg or machine in its traits from among them into our hand, or to the bottom of this Digimon's Digivolution source, so he still has a way of adding to his inheritables based on what we reveal, on top of the fact that we're trashing the rest of the cards to be able to line up with our other Machinedramon. So between the 2 different Machinedramons, we have even different ways that we could customize our level 6s. On top of the fact that he does have a nice on-delete ability, where we get to return one of our analog mans to the bottom of our deck to be able to play 1 Machinedramon from our hand for free, so that way we could always try to have a Machinedramon acting kind of similar to the old Machinedramon, where it just wants to be able to play itself and replay itself, and this one does a little bit of a better job, even though it's a little bit harder to build good stacks because it's not fixing its stack as well as the other Machinedramon. But that's just the fun and flexibility on having different options to be able to customize the deck to your liking and still be able to play this type of deck even if you don't have access to the other Machinedramon. Next up, we have a new version of Bergeron. So what this Bergeron is going to be doing is it has the native ability of Blocker, so Red is getting some more defensive tools outside of just more control and removal. Then on top of that, it has a nice inheritable ability of on delete. We get to play 1 4 cost or lower red tamer from our hand without paying its memory cost. Again, adding alternative ways to be able to play our tamers is pretty good because setting up our tamers sometimes is going to be a little bit hard depending on the state of the game. And any ways that we have to be able to make our tamers more playable is generally a good thing. Next up, we have a new version of Garudamon. So this new version of Garudamon, similar to the Bergeron that we just saw, is going to be another blocker. So having multiple blockers on multiple different stages, again, just adds to the overall defensive capabilities of what the color can do. On top of the fact that it has a nice inheritable ability of on delete, we get to play 1 4-cost or lower red tamer from our hand for free, which again is just adding alternative ways to be able to play our tamers and be able to spawn lots of tamers really quickly. Next up, we have a brand new version of Yokomon. So this Yokomon is going to be the Digitama for this new Bergeron line, and its inheritable ability states that on delete, if we have a red tamer in play, then we get to draw 1 card, and it's just adding more card draw to what we could possibly do, and this is pretty good for not just the Bergeron line that we got, but this is just a pretty decent generic inheritable ability for any aggressive red deck to get some extra card draw in. And then to round out what the new Bergeron line is going to be doing, we have a brand new version of Phoenixmon. So this brand new version of Phoenixmon is actually a pretty decent level 6 red Digimon. So during your turn, once per turn, when a card is removed from the opponent's security stack, so when we're attacking it or if we're burning the opponent's security, then we get to activate one of this Digimon's on-delete abilities, so it's allowing us to be able to use and reuse our on-delete abilities for even greater effect. Then it has an on-delete ability itself, where we get to play a red Digimon card with Bird or Beast in its traits, with 3000 DP or less from our hand without paying its memory cost, and for each red tamer we have in play, we get to add 2000 DP to the maximum number of DP we could choose with this effect. So at worst, we're going to be replacing itself with a rookie, and at best, we're going to be playing potentially another high-level Digimon. And the tamer to go along with this evolution line is going to be Akiho. So Akiho is a 3-costed red tamer with an on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 4 cards from our deck, add 1 red Digimon with vaccine in its traits from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom of our deck in any order. So it's just a good card to help dig out some of our parts and pieces to be able to combo off with, because we know that the line wants to be able to play our tamers and play lots of tamers. Then it has the secondary ability where during your turn, when you play a red Digimon with Bird or Beast in its traits by a card effect, by suspending this tamer, then that Digimon gains the rush ability, so we could keep up the pressure off of the Digimon we're going to be playing off of our Phoenixmon. And then the option for that style of deck is going to be Crimson Flare. So Crimson Flare is a 5-costed red option with the main ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 8000 DP or less, which is pretty decent. Then if we have a red tamer in play, we get to activate the on-delete ability of one of our red Digimon with vaccine in its traits. So again, it's just trying to trigger our on-delete abilities recursively with our Phoenixmon to be able to spawn extra tamers easily and efficiently, or be able to spawn extra Digimon easily and efficiently with, that also might have rush if we already have a tamer set up. So it's just adding to the overall combo plays and removal to what that type of a deck is trying to do, with the security ability of activating its main. Next, we have a new version of Dragoon. So this new version of Dragoon is going to be supporting not only just one deck, but 2 decks in the form of Dragons and Examon and Blue Flares. So this can Digivolve for 0 on top of any Baby Demon, which is pretty decent because we have a couple of different Baby Demon we could take advantage of with this card. And on top of that, it has an ability where during your turn, once per turn, when you play another Digimon with Dramon in its name or Blue Flare in its traits, then we get to draw 1 card. So with Blue Flares and Dramons, they both want to try to hard play some of their level 4s or 5s to be able to gain some extra benefits because of, well, either their on-play abilities or the Digicross ability. So this just helps add some extra card draw into those types of strategies, on top of the fact that it has a nice inheritable ability for both of them to use, where during your turn, once per turn, when you play another Digimon with Dramon in its name or Blue Flares in its traits, then we get to gain 1 memory, helping with the overall memory management for what those decks want to be doing. But speaking of Blue Flares, next we have a brand new version of Metal Greymon, except it's Metal Greymon plus Cyber Launcher. So this card is also going to be treated as a Metal Greymon and as a Cyberdramon because, well, it's the fusion of both and it still wants to be played with some of our cards. But this is going to be a level 5 blue Digimon with the alternative Digivolution conditions where he could Digivolve for 4 on top of a level 4 blue Digimon or for 2 on top of a level 5 blue Digimon. Then he has the Armor Purge ability, which just allows him to basically save himself and try to keep the body on the field as long as we possibly can. And he has a nice on-play/when Digivolving ability, where we get to place one Digimon with blue flares in its traits from our hand or underneath one of our tamers to the bottom of this Digimon's Digivolution source. Then we can return one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon to the bottom of their deck, and if this Digimon has Cyberdramon in its Digivolution source, then we get to return one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to the bottom of their deck also for some extra removal to try to deal with the opponent's wide field when we're ready to be aggressive. Then he has the Digicross 2 ability where we could reduce his play cost by 2 for Metal Greymon and Cyberdramon, using him to hard play this card. So this card's actually going to be costing 4 when we hard play it utilizing both of these cards, making him just a pretty solid new inclusion for the blue flares to think about utilizing. And speaking of blue flares, next we have a new version of Greymon. So Greymon is going to be the new blue level 6 for the blue flare deck, and he could Digivolve for 2 off of a Metal Greymon, which is pretty good because, well, we have some decent Metal Greymons that we already want to be using. Then he has a nice when Digivolving ability where we get to unsuspend this Digimon. So just that part of the ability alone is already really appealing, just because we could be extra aggressive with this card, which is not anything new or special that blue hasn't been doing before. Then if a card with blue flares or cross hearts is in its traits, is in this Digimon's Digivolution source, and your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, then we get to gain 2 memory, essentially making him a free evolution when this ability is lined up. So not only can we be extra aggressive with this card with that unsuspend ability, but the fact that it could be potentially free is already very, very appealing to be able to add to the overall aggression to what blue flares can possibly do. Then he has the on-delete ability of save, and we get to place one blue Greymon and one blue male Bergeron from our trash underneath one of our tamers with general in its traits, so that way we could try to reuse our parts and pieces when they get lost to be able to continue the pressure and aggression with the whole Digicross ability. And then on top of that, he has the nice inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, while this Digimon has blue flare in its traits, then it gains the blocker ability, so that way we could use this in combination with some of our other cards to be able to have some good defensive plays as well, on top of the control and aggro elements that the deck already wants to lean into. Next, we have Dokunomon, and Dokunomon is just going to be a vanilla purple rookie. So it just has the classic stat line of 3 to hard play, 0 to Evo, and 4000 DP, doing absolutely nothing special. Next, we have a new version of Sunamon. So this new Sunamon is going to be interacting with some discard synergy because its inheritable ability states that during your turn, once per turn, when a card is trashed from your hand by a card effect, then this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP until the end of the turn, making it just an okay way for purple to be able to DP boost its Digimon, because that's something purple generally has a hard time with, if we really need to look for a DP booster. Next, we have Dark Lizardmon. So Dark Lizardmon is going to be a level 4 purple Digimon. Again, stats nothing to write home about, but he does have 2 pretty decent abilities. The first one is going to be Retaliation, so that way he could try to control the opponent's field if they have any vulnerable Digimon for us to attack into. That's ideally going to be larger than him, so he could delete them with the Retaliation ability. Then to pair up with the Retaliation ability, he has a nice on-delete ability where we get to draw 1 card and then discard 1 card, so it's just acting as some good cycling, which isn't anything new for purple to be interacting with. But the fact that we have more level 4 Retaliation Digimon is something pretty interesting to note, because it plays in combination with this brand new version of Soulmon, which natively has Retaliation himself, and all of your Digimon with Retaliation gain plus 2000 DP, so you could actually try to start focusing and honing a more Retaliation-based deck. Next up, we have a new version of Koraman. So this new version of Koraman is color shifted to black, so it has the inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon is deleted, if this Digimon has Greymon in its name, then we get to draw one card. So it's just acting as some decent draw for more Black Greymon based decks, which we kind of already started to see with Blackwargreymon. And speaking of Blackwargreymon, we actually got a whole new line of X antibodies for the Blackwargreymon more specifically. So we have a new version of Agumon X Antibody. So this is the virus version of Agumon playing around with what the Blackwargreymon deck is trying to do or was trying to do. So like the other X Antibody Agumon, he could Digivolve for 0 on top of base form Agumons, and he has the on play and when Digivolving ability where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 card with Greymon or X Antibody in its name from among them, and 1 Black Tamer from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this is actually a better digging tool than the red Agumon X Antibody, just because it's allowing us to be able to take a Tamer as well as our Greymons. Then on top of that, he actually has an inheritable ability that the other one doesn't have, where during all turns, when this Digimon with Greymon or Omnimon is in its name, would be deleted by an effect or returned to the hand or deck. By returning 1 X Antibody from this Digimon's Digivolution source to the bottom of our deck, then we get to prevent this Digimon from leaving the field, so it even has built-in protection, similar to how the red X Antibody Greymon line is already doing. And then to play around with the fact that we have this whole new X Antibody line, we of course get a new version of Greymon X Antibody. So this is going to be a level 4 red and black Digimon. He could Digivolve for 3 off of level 3 red or black Digimon, allowing us to really customize our low end to what we want or need it to be. But most of the time you're going to be utilizing him for the fact that he could Digivolve for 0 on top of a Greymon, which is, well, how X Antibodies generally wants to play, so that way we could use him in combination with Cool Boy if we really wanted to, or just to cycle him just because of that evolution for 0 on top of our Greymons. Then what he's doing is he has this nice ability where during your turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve into a card with Greymon in its name, we could reduce the memory cost by 1 for each color that Digimon has, more specifically wanting to be played with our Metal Greymon from BT8, so that way we could reduce the evolution cost by 2, so that way we're Digivolving into our level 5 for 2 rather than spending our 4 for it normally, making it so that we don't actually need Nokia anymore, because this is fulfilling that same type of a role. But with Nokia, then you could reduce the memory cost of that Digivolution even further if we really wanted to. And this still just works with monocolored cards as well, by at least reducing the Digivolution cost by 1, so it's still just a good card to use even without the BT8 Metal Greymon. Then he has a nice inheritable ability that, again, is adding some extra protection, where during all turns, when a Digimon with Greymon or Omnimon in its name would be deleted by an effect or returned to the hand or deck, by returning an X Antibody from this Digimon's Digivolution source to the bottom of the deck, then this Digimon can prevent itself from leaving play, again adding that protection that the deck really wanted to use and why it was using the red X Antibody line to begin with. And next, to no one's surprise, we have a new version of Metal Greymon X Antibody. So this new version of Metal Greymon X Antibody is going to be a red-black level 5 that can Digivolve for 4 on top of a red or black level 4 Digimon. Then he has the alternative Digivolution condition where we could Digivolve him for 1 on top of a Metal Greymon, which is a little bit more expensive compared to the other Metal Greymon X Antibody, but the payoff is so much more, which definitely warrants that extra 1 memory, especially since the Greymon helps reduce the memory, so it makes up for it in some way, shape, or form to equal out to the same type of memory transaction. And the benefit for utilizing this card, especially in combination with this stack, is the fact that he has a nice when Digivolving ability, where until the end of the opponent's turn, your opponent's effects can't have this Digimon's DP be reduced, and it can't be de-Digivolved. Then, if this Digimon has Greymon or X Antibody in its Digivolution source, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less. So just the added protection off of this ability alone definitely makes up and warrants wanting to run him, just because, well, That's what we've seen with something like Alphamon, where he was so successful just because of all of the different protection that he has, and the fact that he actually has protection from de-digivolve is something very, very powerful and noteworthy, just because we haven't really seen an effect like that before. Then, on top of that, he has a nice inheritable ability, where during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when a Digimon becomes unsuspended, if this Digimon has Greymon or Omnimon in its name, we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security stack, which we saw with the BT8 Blackwargreymon. We could unsuspend him by allowing him to try to attack into the opponent's Digimon, or him blocking if we have blocker set up, adding more ways to be able to control and manipulate some of the opponent's actions, especially since we know that with this stack and this new line, it's going to make our Blackwargreymon even stickier than before. And then, speaking of Blackwargreymon, next we have Blackwargreymon X Antibody. So Blackwargreymon X Antibody is a pretty decent card for us to use. He's a little bit expensive normally, costing us 5 to Digivolve off of a level 5 red or black Digimon, for being a red-black level 6 himself at 13,000 DP. So the stats aren't anything we haven't seen before, and he has the alternative Digivolution condition where we could Digivolve him for 2 on top of a Blackwargreymon, which is pretty decent considering that's like the whole point of the deck is to get into a Blackwargreymon. And then this card has 3 really powerful abilities to be able to use him in various different ways. So he has the Reboot ability native to him, so that way we could pair him up with Blocker, and then he has Blocker Reboot, which is just a pretty classic combination to be able to make our stacks and our Digimon very annoying for the opponent to think about trying to aggress with. Then, on top of that, he has an ability that states that during the opponent's turn once per turn, when the opponent's Digimon attacks with the highest DP, then we could switch the target of that attack to this Digimon, so he basically has built-in blocker once per turn, which is pretty good, so that way we don't necessarily need blocker 100% of the time if we don't have it. And even if we do have it, then just being able to switch the attack just makes him even more defensive to try to stop some of the opponent's actions. Then on top of that, he has a second ability that also triggers during the opponent's turn, where once per turn, when a Digimon is unsuspended, if this Digimon has Blackwargreymon or X Antibody in its Digivolution source, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost. So not only are we changing the attack from the highest play cost to this card, we're also going to be able to try to delete the Digimon with the lowest play cost, making it so that he's able to control the opponent's field very easily. And then to play around with the fact that we have this whole new Greymon X Antibody line, we have a new Tamer to go with it. So this is going to be a black 4-costed Tamer, and he's going to be the deck's ideal memory fixing Tamer. So that way, if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just always hard set us to 3, which is pretty decent, allowing us to make some of our more powerful plays possible. Then he has a nice ability where during your turn, when your Digimon digivolves into a Digimon with Greymon in its name, by suspending this Tamer, that Digimon gains plus 2000 DP until the end of your opponent's turn. So that way we could try to make our Greymon X Antibody even more powerful, to use either offensively or defensively, and then if it evolved on top of the same level, so trying to take advantage of the X Antibody mechanic, then that Digimon is not affected by the opponent's options until the end of the opponent's next turn, adding even more protection into the deck to make him even more defensive or aggressive than ever before. And then the last card that we got spoiled this week is going to be Hades Force. So Hades Force is going to be the Blackwargreymon X Antibody's premier option card. So what this card is doing is it is a 7-costed red and black option. And if we have a Digimon with X Antibody in its Digivolution source, then we get to reduce the memory cost of this card by 2, actually making it 5 to use, which is pretty efficient in terms of high levels of removal. Then it has the main ability where we get to choose any number of the opponent's Digimon and Tamers, whose play cost adds up to the total play cost of one of our Digimon with Greymon in its name, or less, and delete them. So that's just a lot to take in, but essentially we're just going to be picking one of our Greymons and then deleting cards that are equaling to the play cost of the card that we picked, whether it's Digimon or Tamers, which is pretty decent because it adds more Tamer hate into the game, which is something we've kind of been needing, especially since we know that BT12 is going to be another Tamer-focused set and allowing more Tamer-based strategies to exist. So we would need more interaction to be able to handle those types of decks, otherwise those decks are just going to run rampant like they have in the past with Crosshearts and hybrids. And then it has an additional ability where then one of our Digimon with Greymon in its name can attack at your opponent, so that way we could have our high-level Digimon that we just Digivolved into also be able to attack, which is pretty decent. And it has the security ability to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost, so it's still just at worst in our security, trying to remove one of our opponent's largest threats, so that way we could try to use our Digimon to handle various other Digimon that are potentially going to be weaker or smaller than our Blackwargreymon, so that way our Blackwargreymon can control the field a little bit better. But all of this just seems like it's going to be making the Blackwargreymon line kind of the more defensive version of what Alphamon was trying to do. It doesn't seem like it's super heavy on the OTK. It's trying to take more of a chip and burn type of approach, on top of the fact that it is one of the few decks that still does have that Tamer interaction, and you could have alternative ways to put Tamer action into the deck, on top of less ways for the opponent to interact with your Digimon. So I don't know if this is going to make everything for Blackwargreymon a little bit too strong, but only time will tell to see how the meta shapes up, to see what this type of a deck is going to be doing. But all in all, as far as all of the other cards, we got a whole lot of really new and fun, interesting things to do, and different decks that we could build with all of these new cards to not only support some older decks, but to support some new decks as well, making it very interesting to see what is actually going to be coming out in BT12, on top of the fact that what BT11's meta is actually going to be looking like when the cards are released in Japan and they start playing with them. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.